Hello, BookTube. We are doing a momentous Q&A session on this channel. We're doing 5K Q&A, but not 5K subscribers, nor even 5K views. We're talking 5,000 videos. 5,000 videos I put you poor people through. So I called for questions. I got a bunch, and we're on part 2. And we are up to Jonathan Noel. Steve, your thoughts on the fantasy novels of Terry Goodkind. I believe he is unjustly hated. How did he become the Nickelback of epic fantasy? I think he's unjustly hated. I don't know about Nickelback. And was saddened to learn of his death in 2020. Did you enjoy the Sword of Truth books? What was it like when Wizard's First Rule came out in the 90s and broke fantasy publishing records? I can't say that I enjoyed the series. No, I read the first one, Wizard's First Rule, and it was, you're right, it was amazing. I was working in a bookstore, and suddenly there was a fantasy novel, a big fat fantasy novel, a traditional fantasy novel that everybody wanted to try. So I, of course, had to read it, and I enjoyed it, but he's never really done it for me. I don't know why he's hated. I'm assuming that it has to do with his politics or his personal life. That's why people are hated in the 21st century. But his books, oh my, I think I lasted for 3 and then bailed. But I did read them. I read the first one a couple of times. First, I got a copy from the publisher, and then I borrowed the hardcover from the bookstore. When the copy I got from the publisher did nothing for me at all. I should probably have saved that reading copy, shouldn't I? It'd probably be valuable now. But it did nothing for me, and then we got the book, and the bookstore allowed you to borrow a hardcover. You leave the dust jacket, on record, and you can keep the hardcover and read it if you keep it in good shape. And I read it again, and it still did nothing for me. But I kept going for a couple more books, I think. Honestly, couldn't tell you anything about the second and third book, even their titles. So maybe I didn't go any further than that. Well, obviously an author that did nothing for me. If I were to encounter a paperback or a dust jacketed hardcover of Wizard's First Rule at the Brattle Bookshop, for $5, I would definitely get it again and give it another read. I would definitely do that. And how much do you want to make a bet that merely this question means that will happen? Anyway, Kevin J.N. Hi, Steve. Just curious if you get an ebook along with a physical copy from the publishers. Almost always. Almost always an ebook first. I'm always curious when you tell us you will add that to your nightly read if you're actually flipping physical pages. I get a lot of ebooks every day from publishers. And I read them all. I port them over to whatever e-reader I'm using, whether it's the iPad or even my Paperwhite, my Kindle Paperwhite, which often wins out as an e-reader, even though it has an unbelievably annoying design flaw. The power button is right where you rest the device in your hand. I don't know how anyone signed off on that. It's right there. So that you have a good chance of turning the device off when you're holding it in your hand to read. If you're reading one-handed instead of just gripping it like a paperback, which is the whole point. But anyway, I port the ebooks that I get from publishers over there, and I read a ton of them that way. Cool Bean says, do you drink coffee/tea before reading? I drink neither coffee nor tea ever. Do I strike you? Someone who needs artificial stimulants? What snack food is your guilty pleasure? Well, it's Mega Stuff Oreos. Not the normal Oreos, and certainly not the travesty that is Oreo Thins, but the Mega Stuff Oreos that have twice the stuffing. But I go in cycles. I have some that I haven't touched. I go in cycles, right? So I wouldn't even say it's a consistent guilty pleasure. And what are your top 2 favorite movies? Well, number 1 would be The Lion in Winter with Peter O'Toole and Katharine Hepburn. Number 2 changes from time to time. Probably Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Probably. Let's see here. And do you have a favorite director? John Ford. Although I should point out here, directors don't matter. Isaiah Armstrong. Hello, Stephen Bean. The Bean is here. She's on the bed. She wouldn't hear being in the other room while I was doing this, which is why you might hear the hum of the air conditioner in the background, because I got to keep the baby cool. Number 1, are you still working on your 1,000-page autobiography? When do you hope to finish it? Do you work on it regularly? Since you are only 28, you still have a lot of time to be pretentious about it and take 10 years if you so please. My autobiography, odd dog. I don't work on it every day, but I think about it more and more. as a big book to do. Number 2, have you ever thought about writing a novel from the perspective of a dog? Would it be possible to capture a dog's experiences accurately using human language? The answer to both those questions is no. Jay Shea says, Steve, you don't have any playlists on your channel? I know, I really should, especially when we're talking. The whole reason for this Q&A is 5,000 videos. If that's not a call for playlists, I don't know what is. I just haven't done it, that's all. Would you consider harnessing us to email particular favorite videos for you to make a helpful playlist of these Johnny-come-latelys? I would love that, yeah. I would absolutely love that. I mean, how hard would it be for me to harness somebody to actually make playlists on my channel? Would that be difficult to do as opposed to me making the playlist? I'd think it's clear after all these years that if I haven't made playlists by now, I'm probably not going to do it. Somebody else could do it, though. I know there are Steve Donoghue playlists out there. There are various non-canonical playlists about, but it might be nice to have 1 or 2 on your channel. I agree. I should have plenty on my channel. I just don't do it. It would be a way to honor all the wonderful hours and hours of your company. And Heresy, I probably haven't watched all your videos, so would love to hear about other people's favorites, especially yours. I don't have any favorites, but I know a lot of people do. And plenty of playlists suggest themselves. Mail, writing advice, reading advice. There are all sorts of them. I just haven't done it. That's all. I need someone. I need an intern. I need an intern. I need to become one of those insufferable booktubers who says, without you patrons, I couldn't make these videos. Why is that? Light wouldn't transmit between your camera and your stupid face unless you're being paid for it to transmit. I think you probably could make these videos. Anytime you hear a booktuber go on their high horse about, and without, I urge you to support me on Patreon because without those funds, I couldn't make videos. I urge you, when you hear that kind of ridiculous nonsense, to remember in your own mind, or perhaps leave a courteous comment saying, there's a booktuber out there who's made 5,000 videos getting chump change from his patrons every month. So, anyway, let's see here. Chris T says, although I strongly encourage you all to go tootle on over to Steve's Patreon. I think I leave a link on every video. I don't know why I do that, but tootle on over to my video and pledge $1. If 1,000 of you did that, that would mean a lot of Brattle trips, and I don't think you'd miss it. But anyway, Chris T says, have you ever read a dictionary cover to cover? No, I have not. I was tempted with the American Heritage 4th edition dictionary. I got the big, beautiful hardcover. I was tempted because it is lovely, and it isn't just definitions. It has all sorts of usage insets that are fascinatingly written, and color photos, everything. But I didn't do it, and just as well because I ended up getting rid of that dictionary. Who needs a dictionary? Who needs a printed dictionary in 2022? I saw a lone, forlorn, used copy of that white, dust-jacketed 4th edition hardcover American Heritage at the Brattle sale lot for $5. Almost thought to get it, but I thought, no. To get rid of books, not get more. Have you ever stolen a book? Not consciously. I have occasionally walked off with books from the Brattle bookshop, where I'm grabbing something, I put it under my arm, and maybe I don't find a lot that day, and I always have a printed book with me, under my arm, in my hand, something like that. I would just assume that it was mine and walk off with it, and then abashedly bring it back. Who was the better Thomas Wolfe, 1900-1938, or Tom Wolfe, 1930-2018? Thomas Wolfe is a better writer, but Tom Wolfe is a great writer, too. Have you ever acted either professionally or in amateur productions? Only amateur, and only at the behest of friends. If a role seemed absolutely perfect and no one else could do it, no one else could be relied upon to do it. Also, in any communal gathering, whether it's a retail bookstore or a theater company or whether, I tend to up morale. I've heard this from a number of people, enough people so that I don't think it's just ego inflating on my part. I've heard a number of people say over the years in various contexts, whatever the context is, your contributions are okay, metza, but you really do make other people happy when you're here, so we want you here. So there have been many amateur things like that. Nothing lately, nothing post-COVID, no. But in the past, yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. It's face facts, John. The slavery clause has got to go. It's a luxury we can't afford. A luxury? 500,000 souls in chains, and Dr. Franklin calls it a luxury. Maybe you should have walked out with the South. You forget yourself, sir. I founded the first anti-slavery society on this continent. Oh, don't wave your credentials at me. Perhaps it's time you had them renewed. The issue here is independence. Perhaps you've forgotten that fact, but I have not. How dare you jeopardize our cause when we've come so far? These men, no matter what you may think of them, are not ribbon clerks to be ordered about. They're the cream of their colonies. And no matter what you think of them and the people they represent, will be part of this new nation you'd hope to create. So either learn how to live with them, or pack up and go home. And in either case, stop acting like a Boston fishwife. Let's see here. If you think a book is bad, do you feel you have to read it again to confirm your suspicions? Sometimes I do. In fact, often I do. I have luxuries that a lot of other readers don't have. I read very fast, and I read a large chunk of every day. That gives me the time to give a book a second shot, unless I'm just dead sure. If I'm violently opposed to a book right away, usually that doesn't mean a reread, unless the violence of my reaction makes me suspicious, in which case I will do it. If it is a well-regarded book, do you feel the need to look at it again, thinking, well, maybe there's something I'm missing? Yes, that happens a lot. How many times have you read books you really don't like? Some I go back to compulsively, just assuming that I must be missing something. And usually I'm not. Usually I'm just not. Like, for instance, a good example would be Ancient Evenings by Norman Mailer. I don't know how many times I've reread that book. It's bad. I don't know why I keep suspecting that it's not. No one even is championing it. Rena is Reading says, this might be a stupid question, but how are you supposed to use footnotes/endnotes in nonfiction? Is the reader supposed to check them while reading through? Is it just to check after reading to evaluate the argument and digging into other sources? I had a history professor who refused to give me an answer unless I asked in front of the class. I am very sorry about you having to deal with that kind of an a-hole professor. God, how many, for every story that we hear about such a prick, imagine how many stories we don't hear. God help us. It's not a stupid question. And clearly your professor wanted you to ask in front of the class so that he could snicker at it and hold you up as an example of a stupid question. It's not a stupid question at all. First of all, it depends on what the author is doing in their endnotes. There are never any footnotes anymore. Books don't come with footnotes anymore. It's a terrible shame. They should. It should be right there where you're reading instead of you keeping a separate bookmark in the back to go and find whatever reference it is. But they don't anymore. Publishers decided that footnotes at the bottom of the page scare off readers. Without any evidence, there is no such thing as a reader who'd be scared off by that. Not a real reader. But it depends on what the author is doing with the endnotes. If the endnotes contain just references to works, so, Thompson, opsit, page 250 or whatever, then you can ignore them until you're done with the book. Just in margins, when you're taking notes while you're reading, make note of a claim that you question. You don't have to remember it and stop the reading experience. Just when you're reading a chapter and the author says, no one believes this person, maybe underline the line, put a question mark and say, check on this, CF, something like that, to find out whether or not that's true. If that claim strikes you as wrong, it probably is wrong. But some authors conduct running separate little discussions in their endnotes, in which case you really do need to keep two bookmarks, one where you're reading and one going along with the notes, because those will benefit you to read in situ. They'll benefit you to read at the time that you're reading. Let's see. Lisa Garrity says, once the construction hubbub dies down, would you consider restarting library tours? I pretty much would have to. Aside from this room, everything has been ripped apart and flung back on shelves. And there are more shelves. I have a huge amount of empty space now. So yes, CVBN457, I was wondering where the Spaminator was. And finally, oh no, that means there are others. I must be reading these in reverse order. One of my all-time favorite books is Treasure Island. Can you please recommend a few other great pirate books? Fiction and non-fiction. Spaminator out. Great pirate books? Are you laboring under the impression that Treasure Island is a great pirate book? I don't have any pirate recommendations now. Some people. So, Joel Swagman, Kurt Vonnegut once wrote, quote, Here is a lesson in creative writing. First rule, do not use semicolons. All they do is show you've been to college. Close quote. Was he right? Kurt Vonnegut was never, in fact, right about anything, ever. So, no, he was not right. CVBN457, oh my God. Steve, another one of my favorite authors is Ray Bradbury. My favorite of his books being Something Wicked This Way Comes and The Halloween Tree. Do you enjoy Bradbury? What is your favorite Bradbury work? I do enjoy Bradbury, yeah. And I like Dandelion Wine. That's probably my favorite of his. Noah Giles says, you once wrote in a comment that you have read over 100 books on Gettysburg. Now I'm curious, what topic have you read the most books on? Oh my God. Oh my God. Well, there are the canonical topics, ancient Rome, Shakespeare, the Italian Renaissance. But if we go keyhole, if we go small grain, the record holder might be Jack the Ripper. It very well might be. I don't know. I've never actually analyzed that, but it could be Jack the Ripper. Let's see here. Skoldsdur Svartersticken says, number 1, since you don't enjoy botulism, what did you eat while staying in Japan? Oh, I was almost going to say that's unfair, but what was your favorite non-botulism Japanese food? I'll confess here, I didn't understand Japanese food at all. When I went to restaurants with friends of mine there, what I was served almost never even looked like food, much less filled me, much less behaved like food inside me. I got into the habit of just ordering a bowl of rice, and by that I mean a wok-sized bowl of steamed rice with vegetables. No restaurant was ever offended by that. And we made jokes. When I started to do that, I would make jokes. I'm an extrovert. That helps a lot in sticky situations. I would make joke about how not only am I going to order something boring and bland like an American, but I want it in an American quantity. I want an amount that you would consider enough for 10 people. And they loved it. They loved doing it. So that's usually what I stuck with. There wasn't much in the way of Japanese food that I ate. Number 2, you don't know metric today. For my total confusion, every time you say it's 90 degrees today, well, I do know the metric system. I just don't use it. That's all. But since you have been everywhere except Australia and lived in metric countries for a long time, did you learn the civilized system and now simply forgot because of not using it? No, I learned the civilized system. I don't use it because it's not used in America. And I'm making my BookTube videos in America. If I made my BookTube videos in the Netherlands, I would use the metric system. It's absolutely ridiculous to say that one is correct and one is, what does that mean? That bridges and railways that were built on the American system are structurally unsound? They work just the same. All measuring systems are internally reliable. There's no one that's more virtuous than the other. It doesn't matter. Mob rule doesn't make it better. And besides, I think a lot of people in the UK this week would say that a temperature of 40 just doesn't feel as bad as it was. Better to call that 101. But I haven't forgotten how to use it when in Rome. And number 3, what's the weirdest poet you have ever read? Why was it weird? All poets are weird now because they're going for weird. Weird in terms of presentation that nevertheless has talent underneath it. Maybe Jack Spicer. Maybe not, but maybe someone like him. Hamilton Thompson, hello there. Traditionally, August is a bit of a dumping ground for movies that aren't considered tentpoles. But there's a Jordan Peele Space Invader movie called Nope on deck. Yes, I have a screener for it right on my desktop that I haven't touched yet. Feel guilty about that. Have you seen the screener for... No, I haven't seen the screener. I have it. I haven't watched it yet. What do you think of Mr. Peele's previous movies? Esteemed reviewer, pray tell what other screeners hath thou vieweth of late, and would saith, aye, 'tis good. Jordan Peele's movies never really done much for me. Maybe I'm just not paying them enough attention. I don't pay movies as much attention as I really should. And I have a little row of screeners on the desktop. They're on the desktop instead of in a file, because I know if I stick them in a file, I'll never watch them. I have them on the desktop to remind me to watch them. And there's been nothing. There's been nothing lately that I have either watched or that has really jumped out at me, and I've got to change that. I've just got to change that. I will make a separate report on movies once I do. I should do that. Angela Gray says, did you ever consider a career working with dogs? Well, I'd like to think sometimes that I've had a career working with dogs, but no. No, I never had. The closest that I came was an undergraduate. I paid a lot of bills by training dogs for other people. I didn't have any official qualifications of any kind. I mainly went on word of mouth from proven responses, from proven results. And that got a lot. I could theoretically have built that into a profession. There was a lot of really quick things that people really needed. I need to leash train a dog, and nothing that I'm doing is working. I need to potty train a dog. I need to house train a dog, and I'd like it done quickly. I have guests coming over. I've been told by other trainers that are charge an arm and a leg that it can't be done quickly. I have a particular way of doing these things that I can do things like that quickly, but I fell out of love with doing it. I don't usually like to see how most owners treat their dogs, so and that you brought firsthand up to it. I lost track back then. This was decades ago. I lost track of how many times I would be called in to do something like, well-behaved leash training. I want my dog to walk next to me on the leash instead of pulling. Something like that. I'd be called in to do that, and then the person would say, you've had such great success. Could you teach the dog some tricks? And I would say, the dog's not a toy. Tricks are demeaning. So no, I'm not going to teach your dog tricks. I got to, and worse, of course, much worse than that. Most people, even people who have the best of intentions and kind hearts, treat their dogs like slaves, house slaves. And they're not. They're people. They're individual, three-dimensional people. And after a while, I realized, this is going to just eat you up if you keep seeing this. Better just not to think about it. You can know theoretically that it's happening out there, but at least you're not in the home seeing it happen. So I don't anymore. Dr. Bacon says, are you a fan of the work of Eamon Duffy, in particular his book, The Stripping of the Altars? Yes, absolutely. The Stripping of the Altars is a modern historical masterpiece. Let's see here. CVBN457 is back. Steve, what is your favorite book written by one of the Bronte sisters? Mine would be Wuthering Heights. Mine is probably Jane Eyre. I think I'm more Jane Eyre than Wuthering Heights. Austin Suda says, which Azorian islands have you been to, if any? How did you like them? What does that, if any, mean? I've been to all of them. I've spent time on all of them, including the ones that tourists don't go to. As is true with a lot of island chains like this, there are more islands than tend to make the map. And I've been to all of them, and they are fascinating. I was a big fan of hopping from little island to little island when I had my own wind-driven vessel with, entirely full of beagles and books. Jeff Daniels, are you a fan of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy series? And also, are you any good at chess? I do like the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy series, yes, and I am good at chess. CVBN457, our Spaminator, is back. Did someone order spam? Wahaha. No. It's not going to stop you, but no. 5,000 videos, wow. I, the Spaminator, congratulate you. Well, it's the congratulations of the Spaminator that I was most hoping for. Now down to business at hand. I'm a big Mark Twain fan. What is your favorite Mark Twain book? Probably Innocents Abroad. I know it should be some of his fiction, but it's probably Innocents Abroad. Doom Antidote, another booktuber that doesn't make enough videos. Daily video from Doom Antidote would be great for all of us. Hello, number one. With all the videos around about what books should be in Penguin Classics, is there any book that has been published by them that you think shouldn't have been? Well, my go-to example, I'm not going to be bratty here and say, James Joyce, but my go-to example here is always Domesday Book, which I still don't understand. I mean, The Mysteries of Paris is bad. It's very, very bad, and they published it anyway in a big fat volume. But they did a huge Penguin Classic Deluxe version of Domesday Book, which is a 1,000-year-old land survey. I could see if they'd done it abridged with commentary. But there wasn't anything. There wasn't even an introduction, if I remember correctly. It was just that. I think there was a paragraph-long preface, and then just that. Literally no literary value at all. You can't read it in any way. Just don't understand it at all. It'd be like if Penguin Classics decided to print a version of Burke's Peerage. Why on earth would you do... I had no idea why they would do that at all. There was a publisher years ago, I think it was a UK publisher, who did a version of Domesday Book. They did abridge it, and they had huge amounts of annotation. Here is a property that's mentioned in Domesday Book. It's mentioned to belong to such and such a family. Here's what happened to it over the years, and here's where it is now with a picture. That I could understand. That is interesting. But just to print it on its own, I don't understand that at all. And number two, when are we getting the Western Canon Starter Kit 2.0? Yes. I've been promising this for years, but the more I've thought about it more recently than I have in years. And I should do that. I should do that. I'm trying to figure out kind of the form to do, but I didn't really give all that much thought to Western Canon Part 1. I didn't really give a whole lot of organizational thought to that because I had done that over and over again for students in person and in writing for decades. I think you can probably tell that in the Western Canon Starter Kit. And I've done the equivalent of Western Canon Starter Kit 2.0 more times than I can count for young people over the decades. So I don't think it would be that hard to put together. We'll have to do it. And in the meantime, Doom Antidote and a whole bunch of other people who are booktubers who are leaving questions on for this Q&A. I would like to do booktuber interviews with all of you. That's another feature I would like to start on this channel, is where I talk to booktubers. I'll be contacting everyone. CVBN457, oh my god, the Spaminator. Steve, what is the longest book you've ever read? That would be Reclaiming History by Vincent Bugliosi. Especially since his endnotes are whole digressions. Some of them are hundreds of pages long. His endnotes are not just notations. So it is a separate book that you're getting in the endnotes, which with the printed book comes on its own CD. Imagine how big the thing would be if they printed it with the book. That, I think, would count. CVB457 is back again. Steve, I recently watched the film Soylent Green. It got me thinking, do you think humans will ever start harvesting other humans for food on an industrialized mass scale? Is it happening already? I've had some pretty questionable hot dogs. Don't get me wrong, I still ate them. Never had any problem with spam, though. I am 100%... It doesn't happen industrially now because no one could keep it a secret. I am sure that it has crossed the mind of the current crop of fascist Republicans running America. I'm sure it has crossed their mind. It's the next logical step, the only next logical step to what to do about the poor, which, thanks to them, is 70% of the country. That hasn't happened yet, but I am 100% sure, beyond any shadow of a doubt, that in a hot dog or a hamburger bun facility at Wendy's production facility, if a worker falls into the grinder, they do not stop, disassemble the machinery, and hose it all down. I'm 100% certain that they don't. Which means there's a chance you have eaten Wendy's worker. Or I have. There's a chance of that, depending on how much fast food you eat. I am certain that that conveyor belt of production does not stop for any reason, including whether or not, Jim Bob falls into the rendering vat. I'm positive of that. Let's see here. CVBN457. Maybe he's going to let someone else comment, but he's got another comment. Steve, I have a small dog who absolutely hates having her nails trimmed. She will not stay still. I usually give up because I'm afraid of hurting her. Any advice on how to make the process easier for her and I both? First of all, it should be her and me. The key, if you're questioning, the key if you're wondering, is it I or me, is remove the other word. Other word is the reason that you are confused. You would never say any tips on how to make the process easier for I. You would never do that. You would know immediately that it's easier for me. The only thing that's confusing you is the other word. So in any circumstance, if you're wondering, is it I or me, remove the other word, and you will know. But, there are all sorts of YouTube videos that show intriguing things about this. Some of them say that if you wrap the paw so that the dog can't see what's going on, they react a lot less negatively. Some have said if you bribe them with food, maybe have peanut butter on a finger or tape to your forehead so that they're concentrating on that instead. I think you need a pretty dim-witted dog for that to work. And you do worry about hurting them because if you cut the quick, you'll get a lot of bleeding. It doesn't really hurt them all that much, but it'll be uncomfortable for a day or two, just like if you do it yourself. That's part one. Part two is this is dog health for their own good, which means you shouldn't give up, right? You're in a parental role. You're a little kid, objects to all kinds of things. You don't just not do it. If your dog's nails are getting too long, it'll change the way the weight is coming down on their legs. It could start affecting their back. It's uncomfortable. So whether your dog likes it or not, you still just have to do it, right? I mean, you are in a parental capacity with your dog. That doesn't mean a slave owner capacity. They should have complete freedom. Frida doesn't like having her nails clipped, for instance. But when it comes time to do that, I simply tell her, I know you don't like this, but kindly don't squirm, don't pull away, don't fuss or fight. It's going to be over in a minute, but I'm afraid I insist. We need to do this. Same thing as with everything else. There are a handful of things that we have to do. Clipping the hair on her body, especially on her undercarriage, especially near her nether parts. She doesn't like it when that's done, but it has to be done. So don't take no for an answer from your bossy little dog. Chrisam70. Wow, it's not CVBM457. But actually, we're at 30 minutes. Let's just end with the Spaminator and come back to normal people.